Remember last year's amazing trip? That cute first birthday party? All those photos, all those memories can be freed from your phone with a Shutterfly photo book. Rediscover and share your favorite moments with those you love. You'll be amazed how easy it is to make a photo book with Shutterfly and enjoy it for years to come. Get 40% off orders over $29 with code POD40 at Shutterfly.com and make something that means something.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
This is episode 30,
The big 3-0.
of the Flixwatcher podcast. Over there is Helen.
And over there is Kobe.
Welcome, enjoy, and see you on the other side. On this episode of Flixwatcher, we'll be talking about Hunt for the Wilderpeople with Will and Joe from Exploding Helicopter podcast. So IMDb gave this an average rating of 7.9. Rotten Tomatoes gives it 97% fresh. But guys, stay tuned for the only score that matters, and that is, of course, the Flixwatcher rating.
Come find us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod. Visit the website flixwatcher.tv for full listings, and don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes and leave us an awesome review. There will be spoilers and bad language. You have been warned.
So all films were available on Netflix at the time of recording, guys.
Do you want a professional sounding podcast as professional as Flixwatcher Pod? If you do, we recommend that you check out GL Productions. They're responsible for editing and production. They're also going to give you a welcome package, 10% discount. If you're interested, email podcast@glpro.co.uk, send them the message that Flixwatcher Pod sent you, and they'll give you 10% off your first package. Hello and welcome to this edition of Flixwatcher Pod. Again, we've been reading through your wonderful reviews on iTunes. As always, please do leave us a review. We do enjoy reading them. This one I particularly enjoyed from Retired Cynic, who says, I don't have Netflix, but find this podcast very informative and unbiased discussion. So this is a 4-star review from someone who doesn't even have Netflix, and they're listening to us. So thank you, Retired Cynic.
Well, thank you very much.
Today we are joined by Joe and Will. Do you want to say hello and tell us where we can find you?
A couple of employed cynics, maybe.
I'm a professional cynic. Definitely, that's definitely the best label for me. Hi, I'm Will, and I run Exploding Helicopter, which is a website and podcast dedicated to celebrating films, dedicated to celebrating helicopter explosions in films. So it's my favourite action movie trope, although they do crop up in other non-action movies. But yeah, my favourite movie trope. And on the podcast, on the website, we like to take a look at film with one in, spend a little bit of time looking at the often bizarre ways they have exploded, and give our professional opinions on the chopper fireball that we witness.
So it's quite you go into quite depth about the explosion and whether you can see it on screen. So it isn't just saying there's a helicopter, it explodes at the end. It is really in-depth discussion, which I admit I was quite surprised about initially.
We're talking about the lead up into the explosion and what manifests out of it, what happens as a result of it.
And what makes a good explosion as well. Yeah. And there's a lot to think about.
Absolutely. And we're joined with Joe, who's a part-time sidekick on the show.
Absolutely. I'm there to try and argue with Will over the merits of certain films, which may well happen today.
You argue with me very successfully, Joe.
Thank you.
So which are the certain films you've been on the show with? So
the very first edition of the podcast, which was the James Bond film, The Spy Who Loved Me, probably one of Roger Moore's great films. I think we agreed.
A lot of competition in that list.
one of the best Bonds, and also the first Matrix film, where there's a particularly good chopper fireball explosion followed by a ripple in a building that we look into in greater detail. Angels and Demons, which frankly is one of the worst films I think I've seen. And the surprisingly good Capricorn 1, which I'm not sure if it's still on Netflix, but
Was it on there at some point?
it was on at some point,
Okay.
I think. And yeah, surprisingly enjoyable. People should check that out if they come across it.
Cool. So we're here today, guys, to talk about Hunt for the Wilderpeople, the Taika Waititi film, the Kiwi comic director associated with the guys from Flight of the Conchords. You chose this, Joe. Why did you choose it? What happened? And lead us off in the chat.
Yeah, I chose this. This film came out in 2016, and I thought it was a really charming film. I think it's got a very simple story. Two characters that are having great fun on screen and have really good chemistry. I think it flows well. It's chunked up into 10 quite short chapters. It's not a particularly long film, and yeah, I think I'm a fan of Waititi's the previous work. So the film What We Do in the Shadows, in particular,
Magnificent.
I
big fans.
really enjoyed, and was really looking forward to this when it came out. And yeah, I particularly enjoyed it. So the film is about troubled orphan Ricky Baker, who is described by Child Welfare in New Zealand as a real bad egg. He is delivered to a new foster home to a very enthusiastic and slightly eccentric Bella and her reluctant husband Hec. He tries to escape early on, but eventually adjusts to his new surroundings. But after an unfortunate set of circumstances, he and Hec end up on the run from the Kiwi authorities as they aim to hide out on a rather long stay out in the wild in New Zealand.
Nice. That's a good summary.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts about it?
Really enjoyed it. Sam Neill, who plays Hec, and the troubled orphan Ricky, played by Julian Dennison, have really good chemistry on screen. I think they are really fun to watch, and it's a very sort of quirky film. I think I was sort of reminded a little bit of possibly something like Wes Anderson's Moonrise Kingdom when I watched it, and I think he has Waititi has a certain style that I think is very Kiwi in sort of in approach. It's very sort of similar to the type of humor that you would see in like the Conchords, that sort of thing. And yeah, I think it's just a really easy to watch and quite a charming film, and was probably actually my film of 2016 as well.
Oh wow,
I think it was mine as well.
that high up there.
Yeah.
I had Kubo and the Two Strings, but that's an animation which you don't watch animations, do you, Will?
I never watch animations. No.
You are missing out
I've
on
ruled
some
them
great
out
films.
of my life completely.
What did you think of Hunt for the Wilderpeople, Will?
Well, I did enjoy this film. I thought it was amusing. I thought it was very enjoyable. But I'm gonna strike. I'm gonna start striking. a few
Before
blows
we
here.
go into soliloquy, I'd like to stress that you are consistently the harshest critic that myself and Helen know. Consistently going against the grain on films that are critically and fan lauded, aren't you?
I do seem
standard.
to have that reputation. Part of it is perhaps natural contrarianism. Part of it is just like these are my real opinions. I'm not making it up. This is actually what I think. I mean, This is a really enjoyable film. It is really amusing, but it's a bit so what. I found it ultimately kind of a bit sort of disposable, really, and I think it has some really interesting characters and there's a really interesting setup here, but I think it then just sort of fritters that away with, kind of actually quite lightweight sort of comedic skits. So it is, as I say, I enjoyed watching it again for this podcast, but it really the viewing just reinforced that opinion that this is actually quite a lightweight work.
It's quite a strong stance there, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I'm also kind of glad that you've come on and sort of said, yeah, it's all right, because otherwise it would just be us four going, it's amazing, best thing ever. So it is good to have an alternative voice for it.
She says through gritted teeth.
I mean, I loved it. I think it's really sweet. I think it's really funny. I think it's really charming. And I kind of do see what you're saying, that, you know, there are in New Zealand, there are a lot of problems with sort of children being in this situation, and kind of making light of it does make it into a little bit of a throwaway thing. But I also think it's kind of sort of, I don't know, I just think it's really, really sweet, and there's nothing bad about it. And I think it's quite a nice sort of film to escape into when, you know, the world as we know it at the moment is currently just so bad and insane and crazy, that we kind of all want to maybe vanish into Ricky Baker's world, where, you know, there's a really sweet scene where he's listening to imaginary music in his head and dancing around. Like, sometimes, you know, I kind of want to go into that little world of Ricky Baker sometimes and escape.
You just want to run off deep into a forest and escape Brexit and Trump and whatever other ills are going to befall the world.
Maybe. I also point out, I was sort of doing a bit of research. It's actually based on a book by Barry Crump.
Yeah,
so it kind of explains the chapters of that, and I think it's quite faithful to the source there.
No, well, the book is supposed to be completely. This book is not supposed to be a comedy in any way, shape, or form. It's not a humorous book, from what I understand.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh.
So this is completely Taika Waititi's take on this story. I can't remember the book's name. It's something like tossed salad and scrambled egg.
Yeah, it's wild pork and watercress.
Yeah.
so
it's
not the Frasier.
Not the Frasier theme tune, but that's what I had in my head.
That's what I'm having later for dinner.
Oh, fantastic. This was one of my films of last year. Wasn't the highest, and I think that's mainly because I didn't think it didn't hit me in the same way as once What We Do in the Shadows, and that shouldn't really be a detriment against it. But I think the C word that you guys both used was charming, and I think that really wraps it up in how I feel about it. I think it's just delightful to watch. I could watch it many, many times, and the relationship between Ricky Baker and Uncle Hec, I think, is the kind of ultimate odd couple pairing, isn't it? Hec kind of begrudgingly tries to save Ricky, and due to Ricky pissing him off, he actually breaks his leg, and that forces them into a relationship where they actually grow to appreciate each other's company in a way that you wouldn't have expected at the start of the film, because, you know, Ricky's taking a piss out of Hec for not being able to read. Hec is completely not nonplussed that he's in existence and in his world and could happily live without him. And towards the end, at the end of the film, you see Uncle Hec coming to live with Ricky in his new adopted home, and I think it's such a nice kind of sweet way that it all ends and it all ties together.
They're both forced into those sort of circumstances, not of their own making, and that's where you sort of see the character development really progress. And those initial scenes where Sam Neill and Julian Dennison are having to sort of react for the first time, like they are cold. You can quite clearly see that Sam Neill's character Hec just is really upset that this inconvenience has sort of been thrown into his life. It's quite clearly his wife's sort of choice to sort of foster the kid, and like I think maybe like her first sort of line addressing Hec was like, "Oh, you can call him uncle," and he's just like straight off like, "No, he can't." Not like, yeah. So it's really sort of, it starts off very cool, but you can see sort of that real development, and as you say, by the end of it, that it does feel like those sort of walls have been like quite convincingly brought down.
Yeah.
But you say development. I actually think that for me is the main problem I have with this film. I don't think there is actually much character sort of development. So you have Ricky, who is this juvenile delinquent who has these ridiculous delusions of being a gangster. You know, he's from a broken home. You have Hec, who's this gruff loner, this sort of expert outdoorsman. And you kind of expect them, you know, so as we're saying, they're kind of classic odd couple. Mm. And so it's a sort of classic setup where they will actually sort of learn from each other. And I don't actually think they learn that much from each other. They sort of get along better. They become friends by the end of the film. But there's not really any sort of, I don't think, lessons learned here or growth here in them as people. And so for me, that's why I think this film sort of fritters away its interesting premise on, okay, let's have, you know, a funny scene here about, you know, kind of, you know, riffing off, I don't know, riffing off paedophilia, as we find out in one scene. But
I don't know, I think you've been a bit harsh. I think Julian Dennison's character does particularly have a bit more of an arc. And I guess maybe Hec just has a softening in his heart for someone. But Julian's come...
What's his arc?
His arc is, I've lost my wife, and now I do realise I do care for things outside.
So that's Hec's, but
yeah,
what
that's
about
Hec.
What's Ricky's?
So Ricky is... Well, I can kind of see where you're saying that his arc isn't that pronounced, but because his delinquency is always kind of entrenched in humour, isn't it? Right from the start, it's like he's a delinquent, but you know he's a cute one with it. He's not really doing anything that any other kid wouldn't do, apart from the fact there's that story where he finds out his friend was potentially molested and then she ended up dead, which is kind of like a random fuck. That's a bit of a dark scene in the film, but then it grows to appreciate people and respect, and realizes that maybe being a gangster isn't number one on his mind.
But he's not I don't think that he comes across as somebody who's really going to be in the gangster life, is he?
Oh no, not at all.
But that's kind of the humour though, isn't it? Because obviously here's a kid who is clearly never ever going to be a gangster. He knows it. Everyone knows it. But he's still trying to convince everyone that you know, he is this hard kid, and that, you know, he really does love thug life, and you know, kicking,
who's Tupac? He's my best friend.
The things he's into, when clearly it isn't. He's into hot water bottles and having security and having this, and it is
ridiculous birthday song.
An amazing birthday song, best birthday song ever. That's really what he wants, and that's what he's wanted all along. But he's kind of put on this act, so it's not, you know, it's not really profound, and his arc, you know, is kind of like a bump, isn't it, really? But I didn't mind that at all. I enjoyed the ride. I enjoyed the slightly bizarre road trip that kind of goes a little bit in a circle for a bit in the middle part, but I don't want to look too far into it, because if you do, then you kind of go, well, yeah, it is just basically a series of funny sketches maybe that would work in a kind of sketch show environment maybe. And I think if you try and look in too deep and try and like fill in the gaps or try and make the characters more than they are, then that's when you start to think, oh, maybe it's not as good. So I'm quite happy just enjoying it for the silly songs, and the there are some really, really funny bits, like the bit with the eel?
Yeah, the eel where he goes out, well, Ricky Baker goes out hunting and can't find anything, so Hec comes back, produces the eel, and
Hec, who's been sitting around with a broken leg
Yeah.
for quite some time, and
goes down to the river, produces an eel, and Ricky Baker's face, he has this, he pulls a face a couple of times, which I think I've tried to do in the mirror. I don't know why, but I couldn't do it, and that's when I kind of applauded him. I was like, yeah, that's a great face. And then the next line is, I've never eaten a slug before, and it's really good. It's really good, guys.
I mean, I guess I'm criticising the film for not doing something which the film never actually tries to do. So in some ways, it is an unfair criticism, because the film isn't trying to have this sort of, like, I don't know, deep moment of catharsis for its characters. It never tries to do that. So, you know, why? How can I criticize it for failing to do that? But as I say, I don't know. For me, it just seemed okay. Really, you're kind of setting it up this way, and then that's all you do with it. So I take your point, Helen, about saying, but equally, I stand by my own.
There are some really good lines and really good scenes and things like that, aren't there?
There's a bit I really enjoy when Rhys Darby. They're in Rhys Darby's caravan, and he's cooking something on the pot, and it's still alive, and you can just kind of see it in there, and it's...
Oh, I didn't see that. I didn't notice that.
It's like still alive and slightly, it's like a vole or something in there, and he's just turning it around, and this like little vole thing's kind of moving in the pot, and just little things like that I find really, really funny. So that was a bit I enjoyed quite a lot.
You've actually touched upon like
the bit you didn't like.
The one bit that I didn't really like, and while I really enjoy this film, it's even on the rewatch, I knew I wasn't really looking forward to it. Was the bit with Rhys Darby? I could have probably done without
his
that
character
in the film. It just seemed like a bit of a random thing to throw in quite late, given that the the characters involved have been so like refined to just sort of Sam Neill and Julian Dennison on screen. I mean, it's probably like 15, 20 minutes from the end that like that Rhys Darby sort of comes in there, and I thought it was quite for somebody that sort of is given quite a lot of screen time in those minutes. I thought it was just a bit of an odd thing to throw in. And Rhys Darby is an actor that like I really like him in Flight of the Conchords, but I have seen other things that he has been in that I haven't particularly enjoyed his performance, and that would be one of them for me.
He was in What We Do in the Shadows as one of the werewolves, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I thought that was okay, but yeah.
And he's also he's got his own series on Netflix called Short Poppies,
which I have seen, and it's a bit too much Rhys Darby.
Yeah.
Well, he's there. He's obviously there because they're buddies. I mean, he's there to shift it into that third act where the chase has to become a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And to move it into that area. So I guess he's there in the story for that reason, but it's not my favourite bit, but I did like the creature that he's cooking.
Which I hadn't noticed,
which
actually. So I'm going to definitely look out for that on the rewatch.
So he's there. It's not really anything I went, oh my God, he's really great in it for that bit. But yeah, it is a 3-act film, really. I mean, you've got the start where he's getting to know his new family, which Bella is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
cat obsessed.
You've talked about Rhys Darby as the weakest character, but I think generally as a characterization piece, everyone there has got something there that they have. Even the short scene with Taika Waititi himself at the funeral,
which is very amusing.
Really?
Very awkward. Very awkward.
That is a terrible scene. That's one of the worst scenes in the film, from my view. And I think that scene is, for me, an example of another kind of criticism I'd make of this film, is that it tries on occasion too hard for quirk. And that scene, I think it's trying too hard for quirk. There's another scene. Where they're taking the selfies on the phone with Ricky turns up at this house, and by now he's famous. He's a famous outlaw, and so this guy, sort of the owner of the house, sort of turns up, and he's just desperate for selfies, and so there's a sort of sequence where they take multiple variants of selfie, and it's just like this it's not funny. It's not advancing the plot. It's just trying too hard to be funny.
That's Ricky bonding with his future adopted father.
I guess so, but it's
quite an important plot point.
It just aggravated me. Really? I mean, I've taken selfies with lots of people. I haven't moved in with them, so.
But if you were to take, if there was a kid on the run, came to your house that was famous, and you took a selfie with them, has that situation happened to you yet?
Not yet, but I'm thinking it could happen like any day now.
But I don't know. There's a lot of scenes in there. I think it was just really. There's a lot of really subtle scenes, like the child protection agent, which I think at the start where she's
Paula
Hall, and
No Child Left
Behind. No Child Left Behind. No Child Left Behind. Why are you saying that again? And her dumb cop friend that. Yeah, we need to call the police in. I am the police. It's just really cool kind of chemistry between a lot of different people, and
it's very silly.
It's the absurd overreaction to the whole situation.
If you play
she's treating this like a manhunt for the kid, really. Like she has really got it in for Ricky, and
after his suicide attempt, which they rule out eventually, it wasn't suicide.
This isn't Ricky Baker.
This isn't a good advert for New Zealand social services, is it?
But a lot of stuff that Waititi's involved in does sort of poke fun at like New Zealand life, and perhaps like particularly like how backward New Zealand tends to be perceived. Like when you sort of have like the old sort of style technology like on screen, I think there's like you have like this thing called Stingray that's like the like homing tracking service for the mobile phone, and it looks as though it's like come up on a BBC computer, and like you have the old like Cadbury's Flake ad as though that would be something that would be airing on modern television, sort of playing, and it's he has a certain way that I think sort of a like self-deprecating comedy that I think people can appreciate.
And the characters are drawn brilliantly. Like we've spoken about a lot of the great characters in here, and I think Bella is a fantastic character. And I was really sad that she exits the film so early.
Yeah, definitely.
She's brilliant. I'd love to spend a bit more time with her.
I'd like to say here that apparently it's the highest grossing New Zealand film made.
Yeah,
It is, and for the reason being that Lord of the Rings does not count in the way that that's been calculated. I think for. I don't know.
sometimes it's where
maybe involvement. It's not.
Yeah, sometimes it's where the producers come from. Although
Peter Jackson's
is Kiwi, isn't he? I don't know.
Anyway, I think we should let this have the highest grossing New Zealand film ever.
That's what I was going to talk about. Is just Taika Waititi and Kiwi films in general, and the Kiwi kind of sensibility and mindset. It does seem to be kind of driven by him and the Flight of the Conchords, but that's not a bad group of people to be in, I guess.
Not at all. And I think actually, like his work, I think has been really, really quite watchable. And like you mentioned, What We Do in the Shadows previously. The other film that perhaps is sort of less well known is Eagle versus Shark, which I think is also a really good,
with
watching.
Jermaine Clement.
Indeed, and a couple of the actors that are in Hunt for the Wilderpeople, I think, also sort of appear in that. So the character that plays Paula Hall from the Department of Child Welfare, one of the sort of in one of the families, I think, in Eagle versus Shark. And no, I think he's the director is sort of coming up to some interesting things as well, and that he's got the next Thor film,
which comes out later this year.
I don't think that's going to end well, because this is a guy who makes like highly personal, quirky films, and now he's going to be fed into the Marvel sausage machine. There's probably going to be 2 gags that are vaguely in his cinematic kind of universe left in the film, and it perplexes me that these studios kind of, I think it's vanity that they go out and hire these kind of very idiosyncratic directors, plug them into their big ecosystem, and they don't really get anything that remotely resembles.
Are you referencing, I guess, here the kind of Edgar Wright Ant-Man fiasco?
I enjoyed Ant-Man though.
I loved Ant-Man.
But
it was great.
It wasn't the film that he wanted.
Yeah, but it wasn't Edgar Wright that helmed it. Ultimately, is the point.
But
Kenneth Branagh, I suppose, did the first Thor film. So there's some sort of.
Well, they've got this track record, but I don't see. Well, what's the point in getting these people to direct these films? So you had somebody like, I think is it Gareth Edwards who made the Godzilla film?
Yeah.
Now Monsters was his kind of film. He's calling card for that, which was really like great subtle character study. The special effects in it that he kind of, everyone went like doolally over, that he did on his laptop in his bedroom, they play no part in the film. They are no part of what makes that film good. It's his ability to work like with a couple of relationships. And so why give him Godzilla? Let him make these sorts of relationship dramas. Like, it's bizarre. Why? As I say, it's like studio vanity. They go out and hire these kind of directors that make them feel good, that they've got an artist working for them, and then they just get something that go and get Michael Bay. That's what I'm saying.
No. You got that totally wrong. But then you have James Gunn, who helmed Guardians of the Galaxy.
I don't know his previous work.
Well, Will's a very big fan of Guardians.
I didn't like that film, but we don't need to have that conversation.
Well, it's not, but it's that kind of. Although Guardians of the Galaxy was the first in that lineage of, I guess, Marvel films, whereas this Thor 3 one, the Thor series, I guess, has probably been the driest of the film. So I'm not sure. I'm interested to see what kind of impact he has, if any. And I do carry your concerns with it, but that also intrigues me more, I guess, than more of the. I'm a big Marvel films fan, but I think I'm really intrigued as to see what Taika can do with it, what he's allowed to do with it.
Is he going to be doing the script as well? Or is he just directing?
Oh, I don't know.
Because I think that might, something like...
Maybe he'll do like a documentary and turn it into... That'd be quite good, wouldn't it?
Behind the scenes with Thor.
Hanging with Thor.
There is
sitting there like washing his pants.
There is the behind the scenes with Thor on YouTube at the moment. Genuinely directed by Taika Waititi. So I'll send you a link to it later on.
Okay, I'll see that. I'd just like to point out, we've not mentioned yet, how great it is to have Sam Neill back on for cinema. I haven't really seen him for a while, and I think this is a
I remember
great
him
role for him.
in Jurassic Park, and then that was it.
Exactly. I mean, he's just been obviously growing his beard since then.
He's heavily invested in his wine industry in New Zealand.
Oh,
So he
really?
lives in was on sort of near to where he lives, which is in central Otago on the South Island of New Zealand. And yeah, you can go to his wine website, and it's basically a series of pictures with him just holding some wine in like different poses. This is what he's doing now. It's his main
feels like
job.
this, Yeah.
But it was-
excellent Sam Neill trivia. Joe.
What was the last films he has been in, though? He was in
I don't
Event
know.
Horizon, was he in? Is that somewhere
Maybe.
else?
I mean,
That's
you
like
say
20
recent,
years
that's
ago. I know, yeah.
1998.
I mean, he's worked solidly, but I mean, in nothing that is terribly like big stuff. I mean,
Oh, I guess he was in Peaky Blinders, wasn't he?
Which is an odd choice as well for a Kiwi actor to come over to do a British film based in Birmingham.
maybe there was a wine
Wine
festival
fair.
or something he wanted to go to.
Those vineyards of Birmingham must be seen.
Guys, can you hear that crunching? That means it's popcorn time, and we'd love to say thank you for providing popcorn for the show and for you guys here at Flixwatcher Podcast. This is popcorn. This is popcorn from the Popcorn Shed. Tell us a bit about Popcorn Shed, Helen.
Popcorn Shed makes popcorn from secret family recipes, although the ingredients are on the back, so you can see what the ingredients are, but it's suitable for vegetarians and gluten-free, which is always an excellent thing.
Yeah, but that makes it sound like it's untasty, which is the opposite of what it is. It's super tasty. Hold on, I'm gonna try some. No,
Very, very, very delicious. This is salted caramel that we're enjoying.
it is
Crunching
salty and it's caramelly, and it's tasty. Sam and Laura make the popcorn in their own big pans in a shed, and that's why it's called Popcorn Shed. Go and visit them, guys, at popcornshed.com. You can find out where to get it because it's so tasty. You need to try it.
Mmm.
I think should we score it
Scores?
time?
Yeah.
Let's go to the scores.
We have our own scoring system. A scoring system is like no other.
The scoring algorithm. The Flixwatcher scoring algorithm. I'm going to make it like a Google.
Do you regret setting up this scoring system?
Not at all.
Every time your shows come to this part of the podcast, I kind of think I bet they sit there wishing, well, you know what? I wish we could drop this part of the.
Not at all.
This is the fun bit.
Yeah,
This is where the magic of spreadsheets come into their true power.
into film. And I think this is where
Could you post the link to your cell formulas later?
I can't. I've been developing these for years. This podcast has been like 2 years in the making, and the final piece in the jigsaw puzzle was working out how this formula would work. So it's interesting to see how actually people react to it, because some people
Yes.
really like how it works, and
Some do not
no.
at all. But first up, the ever popular recommendability score.
Yeah,
I can say it now.
you can say it now. Well done. After 10x episodes,
Yeah. It is a word.
it is a
not
word.
a word.
It's a word. Joe.
I'm going to give it a 5.
Yeah.
I think this is really recommendable. I personally think that you can sort of have a strong sort of like of like any particular genre of film, and I think I would still recommend this film to you to watch, and for the most part I think people will enjoy it. So I'm giving it a 5.
Will.
I'm going to give it a 4. It is a really enjoyable film, despite the criticisms and problems I have with it.
Helen.
It's an obvious 5. You should watch this. I mean, it's nice that it only came out last year, so it's a really new film on Netflix. So it's one that's probably not even been to some people's cinema. So it is quite nice for them to have something that's so recent on there. So yeah, 5. Watch it now this weekend. Do it.
I'm a 5 as well, and I think it's really cool. This is the kind of film that should be kind of championed on Netflix, in that it would have had a short and limited cinema run, but there would have been a fair bit of buzz about it, but a lot of people would simply not have had a chance to get around to see it. And yeah, that's exactly why Netflix should exist. And yeah, 5 stars, 5 recommendability scores, and repeat viewing score to Joe.
I'm going to give it a 4. I think it's a really, really good film. This is probably the the third time in about 6 months that I've watched it. So I think I might struggle to sort of like watch it like in the next like 6 months again. But I will definitely keep repeat viewing it, but perhaps not as frequently as others.
Will?
I'm going to give it a 2. I probably am never going to watch this film again. Yeah, I just don't see it really happening. It may do, but I think the odds are low.
Helen?
A 4. I did see it at cinema. It was lovely to see it on. Oh, that's the next one. But it was lovely to have a collective audience laughing along and that kind of spirit. And I enjoyed watching it again. And I'm not going to watch it this week, but I will watch it again.
Yeah, I think a 3.5. Seeing it twice. I think twice in 6 months because I saw it in the cinema. It's not been that long since it came out in the cinema, and on Netflix. I think there's a few other things I want to watch, and I think I'd rather go back and watch Eagle versus Shark and Boy, which is I've never seen Boy. Actually, you talked about it before.
No, I've not seen that one.
So I've not seen Boy, which is Taika's other film, and What We Do in the Shadows. I think before watching this again. So what did I say? 3.5.
You did?
Yeah, 3.5. Small screen score, Joe.
I'm going to give this 3.5 in that I saw it in the cinema first time round and again on the small screen. I think for people that haven't seen it on the big screen, it probably won't be an issue. But I personally really thought that some of the shots, like the 360 sort of montage sequences that they have in the forest, I think like worked really well on sort of big screen, and you don't sort of consider them to be sort of as amazing sort of watching it on the small screen. So yeah, I think that's what I'd give it.
William?
I'd give it a 4. I think you could watch this film on a laptop, on your phone, on your TV. I don't think it necessarily loses anything on any of those different environments. So I think 4's fine.
Helen?
Yeah, a 4 again. I mean, I enjoyed seeing it at the cinema. It was nice, and the New Zealand landscape is gorgeous, so it's always nice to watch things like that. But it is fairly nice Friday night, get some beers in, watch this, maybe double bill it with another one of his films, and yeah, it's great.
3.75, I reckon.
And how did it drop?
The 1.25.
Yeah,
I think. I don't know. There's no need. I don't think it needs to be in the cinema, but I don't know. It's just kind of a gut instinct. This kind of score. I can't think of anything else to say on that, really.
It's really good for watching.
Trust your
watching
feelings,
Yeah.
Kobe.
Crystal 3.75.
I'm going for 3.7. I don't know. I did enjoy it in the cinema. I think the collective experience worked well in the cinema, but I just feel not really a 4, not really 3.5. So that's what I'm going to settle on.
Settle
on
not
3
quite
points.
in the middle, but
Yeah.
nearly somewhere.
Engagement score to Joe.
I'm giving it a 5. I think it's.
Oh wow.
I personally think that it's not a long film. There's really snappy dialogue between the two main characters who are just great to watch on screen. So I think I personally didn't feel at any stage. Well, actually, I'm gonna go back on that. Like the one stage would be the Restarby bit, which I think is perhaps a little disengaging, but I don't think that ruined my overall experience of the film.
Okay, so you're still sticking with 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Will?
I'm going to be incredibly generous. I'm probably going to give this a 4. I mean, it slips down very easily. I rewatched it in 2 chunks. I watched an hour, and then I was like, I could go and do some other things, and then I polished off the final half hour the next day. And yeah, it held my interest very easily. I wasn't looking for an excuse to sort of walk away from the film. But yeah, it goes down very easily. I'd give it a 4. Happy to do that.
Helen?
I'm just in shock from the generosity that you've given it. I give it 4.5. It's not quite a 5 because the second time round, I think the last part it kind of drags a little bit, so that's why it's not a perfect 5. But yeah, really like it. I really like the soundtrack in it as well. I like the song.
Yeah.
Forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
I really like that as well. So that was by Monica.
Which song?
With 3 members from the Phoenix Foundation, who also a New Zealand-based band that have done some good stuff. So yeah, some really nice electronic 80s synth.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll definitely check that out on Spotify if it's on there.
Yeah, and we'll put it on our playlist.
We'll put it on the playlist, definitely. I think a bit lower than you guys. I think 3.8, only in that this is the kind of film I could put on when I'm half asleep, expecting to kind of doze off during it, because I think I'll just enjoy it while it's going on, and I wouldn't feel like I'm missing out much if I'm asleep. But I'll just go back and review it. Does that kind of make sense?
What higher compliment can there be? Then I wouldn't miss out on it if I'm asleep.
But I think you know what I mean, and that it's the kind of thing you can just chill out to, and if you have a nap through it, then. But it wouldn't be a film that you think, right, I need to stay awake all the time. Taika, if you're listening, I do like it a lot. That gives us, an overall score of 4.1, which is
quite a high score, really.
Yeah. Which does it surprise you it's a high score?
Well, I think it deserves a high score.
Yeah.
And I'm reassured to see that it's got as we've established, Will's quite a harsh critic, and for it to still be 4.1.
Even from a grudging miser like me.
You couldn't bring it down.
I think that's kind of the film's spirit, though, isn't it? That even if you're feeling a little bit kind of
cranky,
cynical, or, it's just so charming and infectious and warm and...
warms the heart.
Yeah.
It hasn't got a bad bone in its
Ricky
filmic
has.
body.
Ricky has.
Not really.
Bad egg.
Loitering.
Graffitiing.
That corrugated fence. Not cool, not cheap.
All right, guys, I think that's, Will, do you want to sign us off to where, well, thanks to both of you, do a sign up, but how can we find you on the internet in the different and myriad of guises?
Sure, so if you want to check out some of my writing, some of Joe's writing, or if you want to listen to more of Joe talking, then you can check out the Exploding Helicopter podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Acast, all sort of usual places you go for podcasts. We also still do the written word as well, so you can go to our website, just put Exploding Helicopter into a search engine, you'll find us, and you can follow me on Twitter at Chopperfireball.
You can follow me at Twitter at Joseph Clift.
I think we should also say that you can also see some of Joe's filmic work on Netflix as well.
Oh, can you? In what? How?
You certainly can.
Yeah, I was previously an extra for a year when I spent time in Canada, and Will is referring to a film that I really hope you never review on this podcast.
And what's the name of said film?
Currently streaming on Netflix UK.
It's, what is it? Dead Rising?
Dead Rising Watchtower, isn't it?
Something like that.
It's an unfortunate computer game based series with zombies.
Were you a zombie?
I was a zombie.
Oh.
I was involved in an overnight shoot where it was freezing cold, and had to sort of slow walk to a flaming sort of barrel and things like that, and there was an explosion, had to sort of be in the aftermath as a dead zombie who is carefully leaning on his elbow so his face isn't in contact with the extremely cold floor.
So what was your audition like to be a zombie? Was it just, you'll do, or did you have to do a walk and a moan?
Actually, we commented on this before. So the director basically sort of gave some direction on so we want you to be quicker than Walking Dead zombie, but not 28 days later zombie. So
if you can manage
some sort of middle sort of ground between that. So
okay,
I managed to get one of the plum rolls, which was walking past some of the flaming materials, so I kept warm that way.
Oh well.
The first zombie on the podcast. So
definitely.
This is great.
Thank you.
It's nice to know you're not discriminating against the undead.
Why would you? Right, well.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, cheers guys. Really
Thank you
enjoyed
very
it.
much.
That was great.
4.1, fantastic film. And see you guys later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, and that was Hunt for the Wilderpeople, as chosen by the guys at Exploding Helicopter. That's Will and Joe. Please do connect with them online. All the details for them are in the show notes. And please, tell them that we sent you as well. Tell them that you heard about them through Flixwatcher podcast, because that's really cool. And, it's good to share the love. Please don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. And, of course, we want to big up Tony and Jay and also Greg, our editors from GL Productions. Of course, please big up Mighty People for the tunes you can hear now. And at the start of the podcast, find us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod and visit our website, flixwatcher.tv.